Welcome to Northbound Alaska, the Trucking Files, a podcast where we talk to haul road drivers, both past and present, to carry on the knowledge and experience of one of the toughest roads on Earth.
On this episode, Aaron and Nathan sit down with Jack Bender. Jack came to Alaska in 1968, began trucking the haul road in 1974, and has well over 4 million miles alone.
That's right. I'm going to make it work.
Guess we should probably get started.
So we're sitting here with Jack Bender. Now, this is a haul road legend right here. I know he doesn't want to admit it, but you can have that title.
I know he's one of my heroes.
He's one of Aaron's heroes, and I met Jack recently. And Jack, you probably knew my old man, Joe File. You probably knew John back in the day. And you probably have some dirt on those guys, maybe. But why don't you talk about your story of coming to Alaska? How did you get up here?
You know, it's kind of interesting. My dad, I don't know if he grew up dreaming about Alaska or not, but when he got back home after World War II, his big dream was to come to Alaska. He'd known about the Alaska Highway, and he was just kind of he always figured he was born about 100 years too late. He should have been born back in the old cowboy days, probably. And I've always said about him, he always had to see what was over the next hill or around the next curve, and I guess I kind of inherited a little bit of that from him, but that's on the side. He had moved our family down to Arizona in the late 50s. I was about 10 years old, so I grew up down there, went through high school and a couple of years of college, met my wife when we were in high school, and that dream never left my dad. He would look for books in the library to read about Alaska, and I kind of acquired some of that from him then. So in 1968, I had just finished my second year of college. He had moved. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. So he had moved the rest of the family back to Minnesota again, where he was originally from. And my wife and I left Arizona in our Volkswagen Beetle with our German Shepherd in the back and a bunch of clothes. That's about all we had room for.
What color was that car?
It was kind of a white, kind of an off-white 65 Volkswagen.
It didn't have a 53 painted on the side, did it?
It did not.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. So you guys took that bug. Did you go back to Minnesota or what?
No, we left directly from Phoenix and came directly up and met my dad just north of Calgary. And he drove across. We had bought a 56 Chevy pickup, and I've still got that pickup. In fact, it's out there behind Casey's shop. So my dad drove that across from Minnesota, and we met up there, stopped in Edmonton, rented a tow bar, and hooked that Volkswagen on behind the old Chevy. Had kind of an old homemade topper on the back of that pickup, and my wife never did any driving, and for anybody who'd been over the road in the late 60s into the early 70s, it was a lot different road than it is now. Just windy, and it seemed like it was mud and slop the whole way. I think it rained just about the whole way.
That was 1968.
68, yeah. That was the year after the flood.
Okay.
We got here.
What month was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was right toward the end of May when we got here.
Okay.
I want to say that we left Arizona, my wife and I did, on the 20th. Kind of sticks in my mind.
Yeah.
And so it was quite a trip. We stopped down in Valley View somewhere and pulled the transmission out of that old pickup and replaced a rear seal in the motor. And anyway, got to Fairbanks. It was beautiful weather here. Got a motel room. We hadn't gotten any motel rooms at all on the way up. And my wife was about at the limit of her endurance.
Were you guys just stopping and sleeping in the vehicle, or what?
We just kept going. Yeah, we just drove 24/7, and we'd take turns. There was kind of a makeshift bunk in the back of that Old Topper, and my wife was scared to get back there because she's afraid one of us or both of us would go to sleep and run off the road.
Oh, yeah.
So she sat in the middle of the seat, and I look at that old pickup now, and three of us in there, and our German Shepherd was still in the Volkswagen. That was all covered with mud. Yeah, he was a pretty good sport. So yeah, I don't think Linda hardly ever got in the back, but my dad and I would take turns getting back there and taking a nap. But boy, we were pretty bleary-eyed. And it's funny because we drove into Fairbanks, and it was late, getting close to midnight maybe. Drove all the way through town. We kept thinking we'd get down to the main part of town, and we got over onto Illinois Street somewhere and realized we were leaving town again. So we circled back around and checked at one hotel, can't think of the name of it, it's gone now, been gone for some years. Ended up at the old Sullivan Hotel, which is also gone now. So we got a room there for the night. It was outrageous price, like $20 or something, And got up the next morning, went over to Safeway, which is the furniture store now, Went over there and got some food to eat, and my dad had a friend, a guy that he'd worked with down in Arizona, driving the ready-mix trucks, and he was up here. He'd come up here, and it was just construction work, seasonal work at that time, and we got connected with him and stayed with him for a while, and then ended up renting a dump of a place out there at 6 Mile Village on the Old Rich. And my dad and I both went to work for, what did she call it? It was Charlotte Maskey who owned that. Alaska Ready Mix, I think is what she called it. And they had contracted to provide a lot of the concrete for buildings that were going up at the university. So that's what we did that summer. And my plan kind of evolved, and I thought, well, I'll just finish my college up here. And my wife went to work at Nerland's at the furniture store downtown. She got pregnant that summer, and she started having complications right away. And getting on toward fall, September, October timeframe, we were still working, still pouring concrete. I had started classes and was working kind of a swing shift there, driving ready-mix truck. And Linda had to quit her job. And without her working, me staying in school wasn't feasible. So we started making plans to leave. It was about 30 below the night my dad and I took off in that old pickup. And we had a cat, and that German Shepherd was in the back. Well, he sat between us on the seat part of the time, and we about froze to death in that old pickup. It didn't have much of a heater in it. And we headed down the road back to Minnesota. I had flown my wife out.
She probably didn't want to ride with you guys again.
She had no desire to get in that old pickup again. In those days, that was before the lottery with the draft board, and of course Vietnam was going full bore. And I had a student deferment because I signed up for the draft when I was still in high school. In those days, if you lost your student deferment, if you dropped out of school, you immediately got reclassified to 1A, and then you had to appeal that down. Which, for example, if before I signed up for the draft, if I'd been married and got her pregnant, I would have been a 4A, which chances of me having to go at all then. And I wasn't opposed to going in the military, but I thought, why do it if I could stay in school?
Yeah.
Well, we were in Minnesota for a while, and I worked in the woods with my dad for a while, and then about Christmas time, we went back down to Arizona and moved in with her folks. They had an apartment in their house. We moved in there, and in February, on my 21st birthday, I got my reclassification and my notice to come in for a physical. And in those days, that you were probably on the slippery slope then. So I ended up enlisting. Make a long story short, I enlisted for 4 years. in Army Security Agency, went to basic training, got out of there, went to language school, learned to speak Laotian, of all things.
Wow.
I didn't even know where Laos was at that time. I knew it was over in Asia somewhere. As soon as I found out where it was, I figured, well, I'll go to Vietnam for sure. But I never did. Got out of language school, did some cross-training, and went to Fort Riley, Kansas, and stayed there for the rest of my time in the Army. I figured the pipeline was going to be over and done with by the time I got out of the Army. That was my big concern. But got out in the spring of '72. I got a year drop, early out. Started coming back up here again for summers. By then we had 2 kids. And we just started working here seasonally. I worked for Fairbanks Sand and Gravel, poured a lot of concrete, made good money.
What year did you come back after Kansas?
In '72.
72.
Came up here in April
Okay.
then of '72. And 72, '73, and the first part of '74. Well, my dad and I came up in January of '74 because that's when everything kicked off. All the lawsuits and all the things that have been holding up the pipeline, everything took off. And DOT or the state, you had the road, like the Taps Road from Livengood to the river is pretty much the way it is now with, there's a lot of improvements on it, but basically the same road. Here to Livengood was the old Kamikaze Trail. And then from the Yukon River north was basically just a bulldozed road out across the tundra. They just pushed snow and trees and everything back out of the way. Most stretches it was just 1 lane or 1.5. You had to be careful. They'd make pullouts every now and then. So you just watched when you saw some headlights coming, you just duck in a pullout, and whoever turned their lights off first, that meant he was going to wait. We didn't have CB radios. And so January '74 was my first trip north.
So was that the original draw in '68? Was that you getting ready for the pipeline, or what? Why did you guys?
They were getting, they were. You mean the work we were doing?
Well,
then,
when you started from Arizona, was that were you hearing about the pipeline? Is that why you decided to go?
No, that's a good question. That really wasn't it. It was just more about my dad's dream, I guess. And this guy that he knew, Bud Burkett, who was an old cowboy from Camp Verde, Arizona, Bud just loved Alaska. He grew to love Alaska, and the more he and my dad talked, the more the fever got into my dad's soul. And so I don't recall hearing anything about the pipeline.
It's interesting, though. You and your dad went together, but he started from Minnesota. You started from Arizona. Was that a plan you guys worked out to go together?
Yeah. We just looked on the map and thought, well, there was this little town, Airdrie. It's all part of Calgary's kind of absorbed all that now. There's a community there, but that it was just a little town. And we come driving in, and that was kind of the whatever there was in this little town. I don't remember all of that, but I told my wife, well, we'll just turn in here. And we drove down. By golly, there was the old pickup there, and my dad was in the back sleeping. And we just took off. It was the middle of the night, and we just took off, and we're in Edmonton by morning.
So there's no plan.
We hooked the Volkswagen on.
You guys are just going to try to find each other there, huh?
It wasn't any trouble at all. Yeah, we're going to be in this town. Well, it wasn't much more than a gas station and a little grocery store there at that time.
So would you say, Jack, that a road trip with a spouse will make or break a relationship?
It's interesting because my wife and I were raised completely different. She had one brother, one sibling. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. I'm the oldest. And she comes, her dad was a career Air Force officer. Her mother's a college professor. Totally different backgrounds. We kind of came from the sticks in northern Minnesota, and I guess never got that out of our blood probably. And Yeah, I think her parents, if I had been her parents, I don't think I'd have ever let my daughter take off like that. I remember they stood on the driveway and went, kind of waved at us as we pulled out in our Volkswagen, headed for Alaska.
That's the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. They thought we were crazy, and probably we were. But yeah, the pipeline thing then kind of evolved, Aaron, and my dad was still coming up here every year working for the season, and he worked in the pipe yard. When all the pipes started coming into town, he worked in the pipe yard, and they weren't really. There was some stuff, as you know, some of the guys you've interviewed got on some of those trips up the Hickle Highway and all of that. I would love to have done that. Had one slim chance at one point there and kind of goofed that up in later years. And I think my dad always regretted not doing that too, but he stayed right in town. And of course, everything was union work. It was good money. And my mother and my siblings that were still at home, they were up here from 69 and 70. And then went back to Minnesota. Anyway, then we're all waiting. Okay, now the pipeline's out there on the horizon. It was just a question of when. So that was our big deal we were waiting for at that point. And in some of the off season, those years before it started, after I was out of the Army, I'd worked construction from the time I was 18 and been around trucks my whole life. So I had it in my blood, as you can relate to. But I started hauling grain, and that was my first experience driving semis over the road and stuff. And so I hauled quite a bit of grain in the winters, and then worked construction up here in the summers. And so then when the pipeline kicked off, I was still young by Fairbanks standards. Companies like Weaver Brothers had never hired anybody younger than 25, and they were kind of proud of that. And the Teamsters, it was kind of an uphill fight, and their big question was if you threw your card out for a call. Now I had joined down in the Teamsters Union down in Arizona, so I'd worked union a little bit down there, and so I transferred in, so I had a little bit of an advantage. But they put a call for line drivers to go to Weaver Brothers, and so everybody'd go put their card in there. And the big question was, have you ever driven a Kenworth or a Peterbilt?
Really?
Well, I'd driven a couple of old West Coaster Internationals, and Fairbanks Sand and Gravel had an old Kenworth. It was an old Weaver's truck, in fact, an old butterfly hood and everything, and I'd hauled a little cement with that. So I could honestly say yes. Well, I finally got a chance. There was the old sourdough freight lines, which Don Spafford had that authority, and a guy named Scotty Haskins. I don't know how they put it together, but they had about 5 new Pete cabovers and brand new Fruhoff 2-axle tanks. And they were lower 48 trucks. They were just the worst combination for up here, but they were looking for drivers for those trucks, and the guys that kind of knew things around Fairbanks, nobody wanted to go to work for them. Well, they had a fuel contract, and so by golly, I got on over there. Brand new Pete, brand new trailer, went over and loaded, and I don't think they even walked me through it. They just said, they sent me out. I loaded out by the airport, and just domed out that trailer. I was about 8,000 gallons, and headed north. And my dad was he was working for Weavers then, and we met up at Fox, and right at the Fox Roadhouse, and Fred McMillan pulled in, and I'd known him, visited with him a lot at the Union Hall. I think he was working for Weavers then too. He worked for Cap some a little bit later. But with the three of us, rode together to Livengood, and then my dad had a lighter load, and he took off, and I followed Fred all the way to Old Man.
Really?
He stayed right with me, and he said, whenever there's something you need to really pay attention to, I'll flash my backup lights. There again, no radios at all. And boy, there's some of those hills. I'd come up there at night and look, and I think, oh man, can I even make it up that hill? I remember daylight the next morning, I was looking at Finger Mountain, and by then Fred had gone on ahead. He said, "Oh, you'll be fine." Told me to be stopped. We stopped at all the camps then and get coffee and kind of check in. I thought, there's no way this truck can make it up that hill. But he did. It was just different. You had 2 sets of chains on. You were running along in second or third gear was about it. And
Were you chained up all the time?
you know, we had to put a set on. Well, Weaver's had a policy initially, and I think that first trip, I think I put 1 set on at the Tolovana, and then, or maybe I put a set on at 28 Mile and a second set at Tolovana. I think that's probably it. And then with Weavers, you were expected to wear them all the way back to 28 Mile. You might get away with pulling 1 set off. I remember spending quite a bit of time. Fred couldn't figure out what I was doing, but I was trying to get my chains tighter in the parking lot there at 5 Mile Camp. And he finally came out and he said, "Are you ready to go or not?" He said, "I've drank about all the coffee I can. We need to go." So we did. And that load of fuel went to Coldfoot. That was my first load. And then my first time spinning out was on Happy Man coming back. I think I had 1 set on.
You spun out with
Still.
1 set going up Happy Man?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I had gone down it, going north with 2 sets on, and thought, didn't think that much of it. It went downhill just fine.
But you're empty coming back.
Yeah, and I didn't get a run at it like I should have. But I backed down, and it's funny. I know a lot of old-timers will dispute this with me, but because we were wearing chains all the time that winter, and most of the time the following winter as well, you spun out. I would just get it in reverse and back down. I didn't have a problem with doing that. And sometimes, well, in 74, that winter, the road was so doggone rough and dug out, and you were going so slow anyway, there was no way you were going to get a run at anything. So backing down wasn't that big of a challenge, as opposed to doing some damage trying to start a loaded truck on a hill. So, yeah, back down most every hill up there one time or another, I guess.
So did you have anybody telling you, "Hey, Jack, get some momentum up and run for these hills," or did you just figure that out on your own?
No, I just kind of had to figure that out on my own. And
Everybody was figuring that out back then, weren't they? Nobody really knew what they were doing yet.
No. And as far as, well, it got where you knew the road after a while, and little by little guys were talking about, well, everything in relation to Four Corners, which is where you turned off to go to Bettles, and that was up in the Prospect area. And the road was we didn't go down the Beaver Slide. We went around where the old pipeline camp was, where the old man camp. We went around the camp on the east side of that and came down Fish Creek and followed Fish Creek on down, and then went on past where the road crosses now, went up that valley, and then came back around, so didn't go up over the knob. Not that there weren't some hills and stuff there, but it was just different. There's places you can see, like on Finger, the old road, there's still a mark there. There was last time I was up there, from where the road is now. If you look over further to the east, you can see kind of a track in the tundra there. That was the old road.
On top of the slide, you can see that too if you know where to look. Yep. You can see that where it goes up over the top. And it's funny coming around the corner, coming south. You come around that right-hand corner. Between that corner and the pipe crossing, you can see where the old road went across right there too.
Yes.
There's so many places you can see where that old trail went.
Probably a little easier in the fall time.
All it was is a trail. Of course, we crossed the river on the ice. That was always a little nerve-wracking. They were always putting more water on it and getting it thicker. But boy, those last few trips in the spring before bake-up, you come down there at night. There again, you're by yourself, and with no way to talk to anybody, and it just seemed like it was always the middle of the night, and nobody else is around, no headlights, no lights anywhere. You come down off the hill and run along and then make that turn to go across the river, and there's water flowing across the ice bridge, and you're thinking, okay, at what point are they going to close this off? You know, are they going to wait till somebody falls in? And so generally, I just have my door open. I don't know if a guy could have gotten out if you were going to start to go through or not, but I just felt better having the door open.
And what river was that?
Yukon.
Oh, okay, so you were driving over it in the wintertime because the bridge wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure they were drilling that, and I'm sure they knew.
They were testing all the time. You just always wondered, and it was a big topic of conversation. Everybody kind of joke about it. Well, you know, because there's always a push. To this day, there's always a push to get those few more loads. You know, we got to get a few more loads. The pressure was always on. So,
yeah, that's funny. I don't know. I'm sitting here looking at you, thinking about all the different connections over our lives and different things like that. But it's thinking about that first truck my dad bought, and you drove that in Minnesota before it ever come up here. But
I did. I hauled some grain with that truck, and then I wrecked it over in eastern Montana. I hit a big old mule deer and jerked the steering wheel out of my hands. I've had a lot of guys tell me, well, you didn't have tight enough grip on the steering wheel. Well, you had to be there. That's all there was to it. So that was a pretty spectacular wreck. Had I-94 shut down for quite a few hours, the eastbound side. So anyway, that's another story. And then lo and behold, that truck made it to Alaska after all.
Yeah, it's just funny that here you were driving in Minnesota, and then my dad bought it in Alaska.
Yep.
And
yeah, and your dad and your Uncle John were hauling drill rigs and stuff for that drilling company that was getting ready for the gas line that was going to go any day.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? 45 years ago, they're getting ready for that gas line, getting ready to start.
Well, they're still trying to work some stuff out. I think.
Yeah, some details. Doing another environmental impact study on it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they said they drilled like 4 to 6 holes at different places, all in the same spot. You know, all the different companies drilling test holes. It's just
because they wouldn't give the records back out.
And how many of those grade stakes? Because they're out there surveying all the time, and there's years worth of grade stakes out there.
Yeah.
Who knows? Politics, I guess.
Yeah.
So did you end up buying another truck once you were up here after you sold that one to our dad, or?
No, that wasn't his.
I was driving that for another guy.
That's right, for Joe, right? Joe Conlon?
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
My dad and I had bought let me back up a little bit, because Alan Smith and I used to joke about this over the years, over which one of us went back and forth the most, because my dad and I had a farm in Minnesota, and kind of our game plan was to finance a lot of our farming operation with pipeline money, which we did, but somebody had to be back there running things. So because I had kids in school by this time, that was going to be my part of it. So it was in the fall of '75 then that I went back there to Minnesota, and it was shortly after I went back there, and I started buying some farm equipment and whatnot, and started farming on our own. We'd had the fields rented out to neighbors before that. And my dad bought a Western Star, an older used Western Star up here, and was leased on to Weaver Brothers for quite a while there. Old Phil Tannehill and some of those guys will still remember that old truck. And then we bought a new Peterbilt in the fall of '78. My dad had retired out of the Teamsters then in '78. I was still back there farming. I'd come back up a couple of times, '77, and I don't think I came in '76. '77, I was up here for a while. Made a couple trips for Frontier, actually. And then we bought that Peterbilt and started hauling grain and we're going to kind of concentrate on our farm operation. By the summer of '79, when I wrecked that Kenworth cab over, things were looking grim down there. Trucking wasn't doing well, and the grain haul in particular wasn't doing well. And we were hauling grain out to Idaho, and then loading lumber back to Wisconsin, and it was just kind of a vicious cycle. Joe Conlon had stayed in contact with some guys that he knew up here, and Muckluck, who had been operating a lot during the pipeline. Muckline had kind of shut down their line haul operation, and they were getting back into the business. They were starting up a line board, and they were hiring guys. And boy, we threw our names in the hat, and there was they put on about 15 trucks, and I think I was number 12 or something. So I brought that Pete, and Joe had 2 trucks of his, one being that blue cab over, and we came to Alaska. Jim Conlon had just graduated from high school, and a day or two after that, I waited till my one daughter was born, and then Jim graduated from high school, and he jumped in that Pete with me, and he and I just drove straight through to Fairbanks, and we got leased onto Muckluck and started hauling for them.
Oh, Jim did too?
Well, Jim didn't, because he was too young.
Too
young. He went to work for Keith Harvey, I think, out in North Pole. Started working construction. Bob Tolman came up that same summer and has been here ever since. They graduated from high school together in Bemidji.
That's awesome.
Jim and I were just reminiscing about that just the other day. I saw him over.
Yeah, I think he's going to swing by here in a little bit. Jim is.
Good. Yeah, he'd be a good one. I was going to ask you if you'd talked to him yet.
I don't know if he'll sit in front of the mic, but he's going to swing by and eat.
We'll lean on him a little bit. Anyway, it's funny. Yeah, you get to thinking back, which I'm watching some of the other podcasts here. You get a bunch of guys together, whether they're all together exactly or not, and start reminiscing, and everybody's got different things that they remember, incidents or mishaps or whatever, and that'll remind others in the group of things, and you could almost go forever, I suppose.
It's a lot of fun that way. It seemed like everybody we talk to, it's like and they might even be thinking about it and just trying to plan what they're going to say or think about things, but they'll sit down here and just other things come up, and it goes a different direction than what they have in their mind, which is awesome. I mean, it's memories come up that they haven't thought about in 40 years or whatever it is.
Well, I wasn't sure, because you and I talked about it a little bit, but I wasn't sure whether the right thing to do was to make some notes or... And I thought, no, I'm just not going to do that. So.
Yeah, it's funny to get to have those memories come up and just go from there. I think it's more fun. I mean, we do have some notes at times just for different stories we don't want to forget. And it seems like we always forget something, but...
Well, I think you guys have done a really good job of that. I think that I guess I don't consider myself that much of a talker. I'm probably a better listener, but when you start reminiscing and start telling the story, then sometimes you get maybe I get too far down into the weeds, and people don't really need to know that.
I think some people, it's like that we want to hear more. It's I guess it depends on the story too.
Well, but I think that's where your role then comes in. What you guys are doing, and you're doing it really well. I think you've improved things as you go along. So if there's a little bit of if everything kind of slows down, then you've got a few questions that you can kind of get somebody's thought process going again,
It's neat to hear the stories from back in the 70s and 80s, and it's neat for me to hear those stories because I was too young to know that stuff. But it was funny. I don't know if you want to tell this story, but you were talking about one of the Johnsons wanting to wrestle you there at Old Man Camp. I don't know if that's something you want to tell or not.
It was Johnny Johnson, and it's Larry Johnson's uncle, of course, and he was a legend. Because there were a group of guys there at Weaver Brothers at that time that had been there into the old days. Some of them had trucked on the Alaska Highway in the early days when it was just barely a road yet, So those are the guys that I really enjoyed listening to. And he was a big man, strong as a bull. And Weavers had put him in charge. They stationed him at Old Man Camp because, boy, there were camp units going up there and well, you name it. Everything they needed to getting the camp set up was the first big thing, because they were going to really start pushing to build the road that summer, which they did. So out of each camp, you had crews going north and south until they joined up with the next camp down the line. So it was just all kinds of stuff, and you would go in there and maybe drop your load, but there would maybe be an empty trailer sitting there, or maybe you'd deck up another trailer and head back, and he was in charge of kind of coordinating that. So I get there one night, and there again, it's the middle of the night, nobody else is there, and you could always go in, just at a spike camp there, and you could always go in and get a sandwich, or if you got there at mealtime, you're really lucky then, but you go in and get a sandwich and a cup of coffee or something to keep you awake. And he's sitting at the table, and I don't think he was supposed to be drinking there, but he was. And he wanted to wrestle. And I thought, come on, let's you and me wrestle. And I'm looking at him thinking, he's about twice the size I was at that time. And I thought, that's about the last thing I want to do. So I'm gobbling down a sandwich and trying to back away and wondering if I can get out the door before he. It was just funny. I remember that. And I reminded him of it some years later. Ran into him over in the drop-in cafe one time, and I never did that. I said, well, okay. You probably wouldn't have remembered the shape you were in. But he told me several times, he said, you'll never be the freighter. That was the big thing, being a freighter in those days. That's what the old-timers like to talk about. You'll never be the freighter that your dad is. And I said, oh, you're probably right.
Oh, so he knew your dad, though?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So was that him that you were talking about, or another one of his brothers that was throwing the duels up on the...
Darrell. Yeah, his brother Darrell. Darrell was really a strong guy. Yeah, he came back, had the duels, and I remember the axle and everything had come out. He just lost a set of duels off the truck. So he chained that axle up, and he got those, drug them back up on the road, and he got those loaded up on the front of that flatbed by himself. Now, there's a lot of people going to say that's a liar. Nobody could have done that. But now I'm sure there was some tricks, because you know how hard it is to throw one mounted tire up on a flatbed, much less.
And those probably weren't aluminum wheels back then.
Oh no. No, they were old steel split rims. There was about 5 of us that hauled those bridge beams for in 75 there, spring of 75, all those bridge beams for the Yukon Bridge. And we had pull trucks. You had a truck with a tank on it. Weavers had a lot of trucks and trailers. We hauled fuel with those, and that was another story. But so a truckload of fuel and then just chokers, cable chokers, and they'd pull us up the hills. And Mike Losey was pulling Darrell Johnson, and they got down to the Tolovana and they had a flat tire, and they were always arguing. And Mike Losey, Scheidler will tell you, he was kind of an arrogant rascal and pretty mouthy and always wanting to fight. And Darrell wasn't a whole lot different. And the 2 of them were pretty hard-headed and just butting heads all the time. So they changed his tire out, and Darrell just stands back and he said, be sure and get those lug nuts tight. So Mike's down there, and Mike was a pretty tough guy. He was a pretty good-sized guy in his own right. And he got them all tightened down in there. And Darrell said, you sure you got all them tight? And Mike said, you can't tighten any one of those. You'll never get any more out of those. And Darrell probably turned a good half turn on each one of those. Just bending the bud bar and everything. I mean, he was just a really strong guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Weavers had a lot of trucks that were just day cabs, and so you just slept across the seats and it'd be cold. And there were some of those bigger guys that really had trouble. They'd leave the window down, rolled their and Ed Siebels froze his feet one night. Why he didn't wake up, I don't know, but he frostbit his feet. He was a big guy too.
So we have a bunch of those pictures from
I'm sure you do, yeah.
From Darrell and Johnny Johnson.
Is that right?
Yeah, we got, so Larry gave us, I think we got about 300 of those pictures back from the 60s and 70s, and I'll have to show you those here when we get done, but it's pretty impressive to...
With a nice camera, with an actual...
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
So the pictures are amazing for the time they were taken in, you know?
Yeah, like I've told you guys, that's one of my biggest regrets is that I just didn't take more pictures. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of memories there.
Yeah, there is.
I think about a lot of the stuff that you and I have done, just some of that lowboy stuff and things we were doing. Yeah. It's like, man, I wish we had more pictures of that stuff.
So
I do too.
When do you remember meeting Jack, Aaron? Do you want to talk about that story? Or Jack, do you remember when you met Aaron?
You know, I think the first memory I have of Aaron was at Hilltop one time when you were with your dad. And I don't know how old you would have been, but something came up in the conversation. I think we were sitting up at the counter talking, and you were playing soccer at the time.
Oh, wow.
So how old would you have been then? That's my first conscious memory of meeting you.
I would have been, I started in soccer, I was probably 5 or 6, but I played competitive, I think, U12 or something, so 10 or 11. But
I was going to guess you were maybe around that 11, 12
year
age, somewhere in there maybe.
Yeah, I remember you at, I don't remember that time, but I was always with Dad, so there was, that was probably at the old Hilltop, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Wow, no, I remember when you worked at Seekins, and I don't know, I just remember Dad always talking about, that's a real man there, that's a man of integrity. He was, man, he'd brag about you. So it's like, he kind of trained me for you to be my hero.
When you talk about the old Hilltop, what do you mean by that for people that don't know?
I can't really remember, but it was farther north down there, and it was just a little place.
Kind of sat down, well, the parking lot and everything is all changed now. When you pulled in that first driveway, remember the fuel pump was there, and they had that Billy that would fuel trucks, and actually then he would, if you didn't mind, he'd pull your truck ahead then, so you could pull up there and have him fuel you up, and then he would just pull your truck on ahead and let whoever was next. So that was off kind of on the tree line on the left there, and then the restaurant was kind of down there off the slope of the hill a ways. Pretty ramshackle.
It must have been up against the trees there.
It was pretty much up against the trees.
I remember walking in, it seemed like they had their candy and stuff off to the right, maybe, and
Yep.
Just a little a bar up there and a few tables. Seemed like it's pretty small, but that was a long time ago.
So Dad was bragging about Jack. He said, "This is the guy you need to."
Well, I don't know. You see all kinds, but he was just. I remember him talking about him being a man of integrity, and he said something else too, but that's what stuck in my head. So it was like, and I guess that's kind of the reason for me starting this podcast. But it's like, how did I learn? You know, and it's like when I first started driving, I had these heroes out there. I had these guys I looked up to. I mean, you're talking about Johnny Johnson being. It's the same thing. You had these heroes out there, and it's like. And if somebody's a hero to you, you want to be like them. You want to go do what they're doing. And it seems like it's a struggle now to find these people that you want to be like up there. And so in a way, it's like I want to create that again, where you have these heroes out there, these guys that are good at this. It's like I want to try to be like 10% as good as they are. So
I think it's an unfortunate thing that the trucking industry has kind of evolved into what it is now. And that's everywhere. It's not just up here, which is unfortunate because truck drivers were just considered to be the knights of the road, and if somebody was in trouble or had a problem, you could always count on a trucker to stop and help. You always, before the era of the big truck stops, if you saw a little cafe somewhere where a few trucks are pulled in there, you knew that was a good place to eat, and just things like that. Those days are all gone now, unfortunately. And so our environment up here and on the Haul Road in particular, it's still a relatively small community, and it's different in its own way. But I think there's a bonding that has taken place, or at least it used to be. Now, a lot of people, you included, are telling me, yeah, you wouldn't even want to go up there anymore, and maybe not. You get to my age, and then you're reminiscing too much back, and the older you get, the more you don't want things to change. So sometimes it's a little hard to accept some of those changes. But anyway, all that aside, this is a different experience. I've trucked quite a bit in the lower 48, and I've trucked up here, and I wouldn't trade this for anything. It's almost like you've been through the wars together with fighting weather and slippery roads and all the things that go along with that. When you've dealt with those things with a bunch of guys, there's a certain bond or a certain camaraderie that develops out of that. That's the part that I miss. I guess I don't miss the trucking per se. Yeah. I miss trucks, and I miss that relationship that you have with a lot of the guys we've worked with. And it's why I've enjoyed these podcasts that you're doing.
And that's why I enjoyed this joke about your new truck here. It's that really made me laugh.
Well, I've got a weakness for Kenworths anyway, don't you?
Well, Dave Smallwood's coming back this fall, so we could put your name on that list too, Jack?
I don't think so. Is Dave going to drive for you guys?
No.
He's going to go work for Colville, I guess, this winter.
Okay.
So I'm going to follow him around with a camera.
A lot of whatever old-timers, quote-unquote, are still driving. It seemed like a good percentage of them are over there at Colville. So
all of them feels pretty easy. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, they got a good operation over there.
Yep, it's fun. I don't know. My brain's going all over the place.
I was just going to touch back on what Jack was saying. Like, every trip was exciting and an adventure, right? Because it's not like the last one. You never know what kind of issues, or if you're going to have a good trip or a bad trip, and those other truckers out there, they're your brothers. It was a brotherhood, and you knew you could count on them if you were having a bad day or broke down. And it's the community that we're all starving for, right?
Yes.
That's the thing that you miss the most. It's not so much the trucking, although there are some fun parts, when you're got that horsepower got revved up and someone doesn't know you're behind them or whatnot. But, that's really what I think all of us can relate to, is that the community of the brotherhood that's up there.
Mm-hmm. And it's still there. It's just not, there's been such an influx that they haven't, and what I'm worried about is we need to hold on to that. That's what we're trying to do. But you get enough people with a different mindset. It's just a totally different mindset to run that road. So it's like we're just trying to hold our own and keep that brotherhood going, I guess, if you will. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I would say that it's coming back around a little bit, though. I mean, there's still, a lot of good people up there, and people are being very courteous, a lot more than they were a couple years ago, I would say, just from my perspective. But I don't know what it's like when you were up there or when you were up there. So,
well, it's a neat analogy too, just going to war together. I never thought of it like that, but that is so true. And there's some of these guys haven't been up here long enough to have been through that, through the weather and stuff. And it seemed like the last few years it's I don't know, it almost seems kind of easy, but it seemed like the weather kind of comes in cycles, and the road's getting better and things, but it's like when people get up here long enough, I think it will come back to that because they realize it don't matter which company you work for. When you're up there in the middle of that, you're surviving together.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess when people have enough experiences like that, it should come back around. And maybe that's why it's different in the States. I learned to drive truck up there. And when I went down to the States for a few years, it's like, wow, this is way different.
It's a different world. Yeah.
It was fun to go sightseeing, but it's like, man, this gets really boring. It's like, when's it going to start snowing or blowing or something? I need something to do.
Give me a challenge, yeah.
That was always fun when I was driving with Aaron down in the States, is whenever it started snowing. It's like we both get excited when we see snow coming down. They're like, okay, this is when the fun begins. Like driving over Snoqualmie, everyone's going 20 miles an hour. It's like, what is going on? This is good trucking. We're going 40, 45,
Well, to me, it's not really good till it's snowing or blowing hard enough where they're parked. It's like, okay, now it's going to get good. And we got the road to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different work. Trucks aren't really set up down there like we are up here. And it's like some of the trucks we had some good chains, but most of them chains, I mean, they're not worth for tire chains. Like, this is dumb. But it's like they won't let you run good chains down there because you won't have a road left.
Yeah, they got some crazy rules. I would hate to be trucking down there right now.
Yeah. Man, it'd be neat to see. I'm trying to figure out. You got so many stories in there with just trucking back then, and I don't know the right questions to ask to get those stories out.
I find it kind of interesting. I was just thinking about, well, I mentioned about those bridge beams. That was probably the first heavy haul I'd done, and I don't know how I ended up being on that team because it wasn't anything I had done to earn it at all. Working at Weaver's there, it's just whatever load came up, like it could be a D9 going to Delta. Well, the old road, when you were going down with a dressed D9 there at night in the cold, you pretty much needed the whole road to yourself in a lot of places, so you were really poking along trying to keep from running somebody off the road. And I remember they had a couple of old winch trucks with power steering. Now, for years, they never bought a truck with power steering because the old-timers would say, well, you can't feel the road when you have power. When you got power steering, you can't feel the road. Well, I noticed when some of those old-timers started buying trucks of their own, once the pipeline got rolling, they all had power steering in it. Kind of funny thing about that. But when it was 50, 60 below, that power steering was the worst possible thing. Just that oil got so stiff and you just couldn't steer hardly at all. So that was a fight. But it wasn't a deal with, dispatcher would never ask, did you ever pull a lowboy before? Did you ever haul one of these things before? It was, here's your load. And it was sitting out there in the yard. The truck's running it because we hot-seated trucks. You were always in a different truck. Oh, okay. So you just went and did it. And now I wonder sometimes kind of how did, because I know some of how you got into it over at Alaska West there. You think, wow, can I do this? Or not, but you don't want to say that you can't. So you just go do it. But boy, you got to be paying attention and thinking of all the things that some old timer you'd overheard him say or watched him do, and boy, you better learn fast.
Yeah.
Now the last few years I was worked with trying to train a bunch of young guys because our company realized that a lot of this experience was going out the door, was retiring, and they wanted to glean some of that. And so that kind of worked out well for me. But boy, I used to tell the guys that what my dad always told me, you're never going to live long enough to where there isn't one more thing you can learn. So you better have that mentality.
That's right.
And I wonder sometimes, it's not just in trucking, but it's in much of our culture these days, at 22 years of age, they think they got it all figured out, and they're not going to listen to those old guys. And yeah, that gets to be a problem. Then
I remember one time Scotty Vaughn had broke his arm or foot or something. I don't know what he did, and I think we went up to 28 Mile, but I jumped in the truck and they had him go with me just so I wouldn't screw up. And I mean, I'm 21, 22 years old kind of thing.
He's along with you just as a trainer, huh?
Yeah, and that was so cool. I mean, that was so smart. Well, Johnson didn't know that was happening. He come driving in the yard right about the time I was pulling out. He had me stopped. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, because I mean, I got the Jeep and booster, and it's like, it's a 90-ton trailer. I'm going to get whatever I was getting, and I was like, the dispatch just told me to go out. Scotty's with me, and so he went in the office, like, I don't know. It kind of went on for a few minutes there, but finally it's like, Scotty's there, he'll be fine kind of thing. But that meant a lot. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we just went to 28 Mile and come back. I think that was the time. And it was funny because Jimmy Powers was at the scale, and we got out there and he checked my license. He wanted to make sure I had doubles and triples on there, which I'd never realized. He's like, well, you got 2 fifth wheels, one on the Jeep and one on the truck. But man, I learned a lot that time. But that was kind of the beginning. Mm-hmm. It was like, after that, it's like, I don't know if Scotty said I could do it or Johnson just seen me, but yeah, it's interesting where you just go do what you got to do, and it don't happen that way anymore. It's funny it's funny to hear you talk about hot seating trucks. It's like, man, I hate switching in one of my own trucks here. It's like I've got to have all my tools, all my different things. How did that work? Hot seating trucks. How do you fix stuff? Or did you not have to worry about that stuff back then?
In later years, I think of all the stuff that I felt I had to have along. Well, you never could have done that when you're hot seating trucks. You had a little duffel with maybe a change of clothes or and some minimal little toolbox, and that was it. And that had to go on the floor because we didn't have sleepers on a lot of the trucks. They started ordering some with sleepers finally, and that's all the older guys were getting those. But it was just different. I think back and how in the world did we do that? But we did. It's just what you did. That's all.
Trucks were simpler, or I mean, not as much stuff to break, or
well, it's probably that's what you guys do back then. That's like, well, this
exactly.
is it. We're going to make it happen,
yeah.
And it was a mindset thing. We keep going
yeah.
back to that mindset. Just make it happen.
So yeah, you could talk for hours on the changes just in the equipment, the trucks, the trailers, the brakes, tires, everything. Before we had synthetic gear lubes, boy, when it was really cold in the wintertime, you didn't want to sit in one place very long. You could take a driveline out just to get moving.
Yeah. I remember my uncle talking about just putting the weed burner on the rear ends just to get them warm enough to get moving again. It's like, if you sleep too long, you were scared to sleep.
You were.
When it was cold.
Yeah. Yeah, you just did. You just took a little nap and then kept going. Yeah, remember, you'd have somebody spun out on 25 miles, slid backwards, and they're crossways in the road. Might have been a load of pipe or didn't matter. And now you got a line of trucks all down through the bottom, through Hess Creek, and one of the coldest spots on the whole road sometimes, And everybody would coordinate every couple hours, move the whole line forward and then back up. And you're just cutting a swath down through that grease in your rear ends. And so, man, when synthetic gear lube came out, that was a godsend.
Yeah. That's crazy.
A real game changer.
It was. Yeah, it really was.
That's out of necessity. You're moving back around, but it seemed like you get these blows and stuff like that, and now nobody moves, and then it comes and drifts around you, and that's another reason you got to move every few hours just so you don't get drifted in. Mm-hmm. It creates so much work for the state or whoever to come in there and rescue people when you just look ahead. But it's funny, out of necessity, or you're fighting your way through things, is when you learn this stuff. When things get so easy, just like the horsepower or any of this other stuff, it's almost too easy now. You're not really fighting as much as we used to have to fight. If you're not fighting, you're not learning, it seems like. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need to fight more. It's like, until you learn how to drive this road, you can't have more than 400 horse.
Well, that's what Dad was saying.
Well, he used to tell me that. It's like, you've got way too much power. It's like, I had 400 horse. It's like, I got too much power. It's like, and I'm starting to realize what he was saying now.
Well, he was doing it with horse and buggy back then, you know. Things were tough back in the day for you guys, you know.
I'd heard that.
I had 4 horse.
I heard at Weaver's, you used to have to know how to run a team of horses. That used to be one of the tests, or ask if you had known that a long time ago. Did you ever hear that?
No, I never did.
I don't know if them guys were just making stories up or what, but it's like, maybe.
Probably in the early days. I mean,
Teamsters they had to used to run horses.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of those guys were pretty old when I worked there, but I don't know if they were that old or not. Might have been.
So, Jack, you hauled a lot of oversized loads, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
What's probably the heaviest you've ever hauled or widest load you've ever taken up there?
Oh, boy. That'd be a good question. I don't know. I know that back in 2008, 2009, along in there, they were doing a big deal right by Pump 1. And Alaska West got the contract for moving those modules. And so that one, we were joint ventured with, I was trying to think of the name of that company. They're one of the big heavy haul outfits.
Like Pre-May or somebody like that.
Yeah, it wasn't Pre-May.
I'm trying to think what the other one was. It don't matter.
I can't think of it. I give Alan Hose a call, he'll remember. So we joint ventured with them because they had and it was kind of a weird configuration for a trailer. It was about like 4 farm wagons together with eveners and everything, and then it had a pretty wide stance, so we had to go right up the middle of the road everywhere, and there were some corners that got to be quite a challenge. But that first module that we hauled on that trailer setup was the heaviest module that had ever been moved from Anchorage to the slope. And I don't remember. I think just the pull truck, JD was pulling it and had the power unit on his drum deck and to run all the hydraulics and everything on that trailer. And then we had, I pushed with an old 6x6 Kenworth. It was an old pineapple truck that came out of Hawaii, actually, that they used for their heavy haul stuff. It was about 35 miles an hour was top speed on that thing. Had all planetaries and everything. And we couldn't push on the back of that trailer, but there was a pintle hook because I couldn't get up close enough to it. The module came all the way back. But so we had a pole that was probably 15 feet long with a pintle hitch on each end. So I had a pintle hitch on my front bumper, and there was one on the back of the trailer. And I've done a lot of pushing through the years, but I never wanted to be hooked to the load. I just never cared for that. And by golly, that was tricky, because if you got too far over, then you were just basically, and we're pushing pretty hard, you were just going to get cockeyed. So you had a pretty small angle that you had to stay within, and that was tricky. We finally just put paint marks on the back, but I think JD was 400 and some thousand just the load and him. I could be wrong on that. It might have been a little less, but it was close to 400,000. So it was 22 feet wide, probably. Awful lot of those modules were 22 wide, and probably 70 feet long.
No big deal, though, right?
No big deal. No. Yeah, you just got to be thinking of all the possibilities, and you gotta feel, even though you can't see all of it. As you know, you're going down the road and you're looking at stuff that's on the side of the road, and you got to make a decision whether you can make it through there or not.
Yeah.
It wasn't so bad when you get up north, but boy, when you're coming up the Parks Highway and there's mailboxes and bridge railings and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had the whole road blocked before, and people are running down through the ditch to come around. He's like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, people get nuts on you.
Yeah, no patience.
I was kind of interested. Sherry remembered that time when you were pushing me. I had the super truck and had one of those deals for the missile project. And we were going to run that little hill and come around that corner, and there she stopped in the road with that gal who didn't heed the warning from the other pilot cars. I was kind of interested that Sherry remembered that.
I was trying. I don't know why I still can't remember that.
Right north of Myers Lake. They've kind of straightened some of that out now, but
that's where that trailer broke on us that one time.
So for people that don't know what they're talking about, you guys were doing a load for the military. You couldn't communicate on the CB, is that right?
No, we were talking.
Oh, you were? I thought you said you weren't trying to talk. You were just.
Oh, we didn't say much. If he slowed down too much, I just started pushing.
Well, and I think most of us, I probably worked with JD the most, but with others too, and some guys wanted to be talking all the time, and I thought if I need to be telling you all the time what you should be doing, then you're probably not the one I want pushing.
Yeah.
And I thought the same thing when I was doing the pushing. I thought, I get what needs to be done here, and if I'm hooking up a little too hard or something and it's too much for you, well then say so. But other than that, JD and I hardly ever talked.
Yeah. That's the way Gary and I were inseparable doing that kind of stuff. But.
Yeah. Because you work together for so long, you know what needs to be done. You know each other. That's the great thing about having those bonds with these kind of guys.
Yeah.
I had that with a friend when I worked at the university. He ran loader. I ran road grader. And didn't have to talk hardly at all on the radio because we knew what one another was going to do, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, because we'd block the whole road sometimes, push all the snow down the middle of the road, and just do it.
It's a good feeling then being part of a team like that.
It's almost like you sense each other. You don't have to really verbally communicate. You know. And that's probably the same thing you felt too with JD and maybe not so much with Aaron.
Some of the exception would be when you got into multiple push trucks. So we had, like on those really heavy modules, we had 4 push trucks. And now you got to coordinate when you start breaking over a hill and you can start picking up gears again. You don't ever want anybody shifting at the same time, so you want to coordinate that.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to make the call.
Yeah.
So why, for people that don't know anything about trucking, why don't you want to shift at the same time?
If it's so critical, if you're going to make a shift, whether it's a downshift or an upshift, when you're that heavy, the minute you push that clutch in, you're rapidly slowing down.
Yeah.
And if 2 of you do it at the same time, it's just about 100% that you're stopped. And once in a while, when you're not communicating, and there again, it's late at night, and you're getting bleary-eyed, and you think you got this figured out, and like when you're pushing, you can tell when your pull truck drops a gear, you wait until he's pulling again, and then you can grab yours real quick. Well, if I'm watching my tack and I'm getting down too low, and I'm thinking, why hasn't he shifted yet? And so I go ahead to grab mine, because otherwise I'm powered out, and he goes to shift at the same time. Then
Has that happened before, Jack?
Oh yeah. Alan Smith and I did it on Tulik. Seemed like we did it with somebody on the knob one time.
Man, Steve was pushing me one time. We were coming south, and we're just coming out of No Name, so it's not that big of a deal. But man, I was in 3rd gear, and it's like, okay, it's like he's back there in the winch truck with a 5 and a 4, and that was the only time that he ever. And he didn't screw up. It was just another second or so. I was getting ready to go to 1st gear.
Just get off a little bit, yeah.
But it was, and then we kind of got back into it, and we're in the mud, and then we're starting slipping a little bit. It's like, man, we're gonna be out here chaining up in the mud trying to get this thing going. Oh man, that mud makes things interesting sometimes.
It does. It does.
Do you miss the trucking part or just the guys? Do you miss driving up there?
Not really. I feel like
you did it all, maybe.
There was a point where you've seen just about every kind of weather, and of course, whatever age you happen to be at that point. You just kind of, all of a sudden, one trip, you're thinking, I think I could walk away from this. And some of the guys we've known, everything going along fine, and then one time they come in from a trip and say, that's it, I'm done. And so everybody's wondering, well, did something happen or what? No, it was just your time.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have said that. Just don't let anybody tell you when it's your time to quit. You'll know.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that quite a few times where it's just one trip. Is like you come in, it's like there's no 2-week notice or nothing. It's like, I'm done.
Well, I worked closely with JD for a lot of years, and there was one morning we're out there loading some big spools, and he walks over to me and he said, this is my last trip. He'd been thinking about it, but he never said anything about it, and everybody's talking about it kind of half-heartedly, but he was just ready to do something different. And that was kind of my thing. The thrill was kind of gone. I really enjoyed the challenge for a lot of years, and it was one of the things I liked about heavy haul. It was just a bigger challenge. It was a lot more work, and I think probably we weren't making any more money. I mean, we got paid well, but the guys that are pulling 4 trips while you're just doing 1 trip, was that always working out? I never did pencil it out. I just I liked what I was doing, and then the company was depending on you to not let them down, so.
It's fun. You kind of get bored doing the same. I get bored doing the same thing. I guess it depends on who you are, but I think I was kind of going backwards when I was doing the heavy haul stuff, but it was just, I loved it. It's like, man, I'm young. I was energetic. It's like, I don't mind throwing these timbers around or chaining things down.
It's a lot of extra work. Yeah, a lot of extra physical labor stuff.
You kind of tell I haven't been doing that here lately because I could lose a little bit of weight.
Well, you're still throwing straps,
Yeah, I'm not getting any younger either. I feel like I was always a young kid out there. I was always in my 20s, and it's like getting closer to 50 here. It's like
pretty soon you're gonna be one of the old guys, huh?
I think I'm there.
At least you can see it from here. Yeah.
Well,
I would just have to say I have felt really blessed to have worked with a lot of the guys that I worked with over the years and that I was able to learn from, and a lot of those guys were a lot younger than me, and boy, I learned a lot of good little tricks from some of the younger guys, so.
I remember you called me one time. You were asking me what the weights were on this trailer you were loading. It's like, I got off the phone. It's like, man, one of my heroes just asked me for advice on how to load this thing. It's like,
I was groping for somebody that had a better memory than me.
That made me feel pretty good about myself.
Did you have a favorite hill or a spot on the road that you liked, that you looked forward to, or?
For me, one of the prettiest spots, if you're coming south and you top out on Galbraith before you drop off Galbraith, and when Galbraith Lake is dead calm and it's just one of those bluebird days, and the mountains are reflected in the lake and everything, that's a picture that you really couldn't describe to anybody. You have to see it.
A camera doesn't really do it justice,
It doesn't. It never would.
Yeah.
And then what's the name of that hill when you're going north before you get to Dietrich? That rock that sticks up.
Suckapuck.
Yeah, that's another one. When the sunlight is hitting it just a certain way and everything, I always wanted to climb to the top of that thing.
You still can. You and Aaron, he'll push you up it.
It's funny, the people that climb up there. I don't know how long that takes, but people do that all the time.
Well, Justin, my son, he and I talked about doing it. And another thing that we never did, but yeah, that would be. I would look up there and I think, okay, there's the route I would take, the leisure going. Yeah, that's a beautiful scene right there too, and some of the people that have taken pictures of it, it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah,
they're just every part of that road had its unique characteristics. Some of it just kind of boring. You wouldn't say it was good scenery, but it was the thing that I always told people, the thing I appreciated and you mentioned it a little while ago, Nathan, you just, when you leave town, you never knew exactly what you were going to encounter, whether it was traffic or lack of traffic, weather probably the biggest thing, whether the state's out there making a mess out of the road and you're going to fight the slop the whole trip, or just you never knew for sure, but you just knew that whatever it was, you were ready for it. You had good equipment and knew what your load was. And
yeah, you never knew what you're gonna find. That's for sure.
And then there was just a small handful of guys whose opinions mattered to you. You learned that.
Yeah, I told Nathan, I was like, you don't have to listen to everybody, but when certain people tell you something to do, you better do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're trying to keep you.
And I think that would always kind of be the same up there. There's a lot of guys that really like to give out a lot of advice. From the time you go by Hilltop, they're telling you what the pass looks like, and it's going to change 4 times before you get there anyway. So,
and people used to ask me how things are or whatever, and it's like I quit doing that. I don't tell people if they can make it or what they can do. I just tell them what I saw, tell them what the temperature is. I tell them what the road looks like, and it's like that's up to them from that knowledge what they're going to do with that. I don't like telling people you're going to be. I mean, I will say that to friends of mine. But it's like, you'll be just fine up there. But I don't like saying that to somebody I don't know. I like to tell them what I saw, and you can make your decision from there.
It's a matter of personal responsibility. And Bill Rogie used to say, if you could take those stinking radios out of those trucks, give a guy a thermometer, an accurate thermometer, and then let him figure out. Look at the temperature and look out the windshield, see what he's looking at, and you decide on your own whether you need to put chains on or not. And Charlie Smooch used to say kind of the same thing. You know your truck, you know what kind of tires you got, you know what your load is. You figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's really good advice.
And really, it seems like people are getting more and more nervous about wanting to, or maybe not nervous, but they don't want to chain up. They think it's like a badge of honor. I made it without chaining up, and it's like... Mm-hmm. And then to sit here and listen to you talk, it's like you chained up at 28 Mile and you went trucking. I mean, you just had them on.
I wonder if it's because tires are so much better now. It's almost giving guys a false sense of security because
that's part of it.
They're making it when that was iffy, but I still made it.
Fuel up there with a 318 and a 5 and a 4. I mean, that was my first mishap on the road, was powering out right south of Coldfoot there, slid backwards and busted a part of the suspension on the trailer, and there I sat. Had to walk a cat down the road, pull me out. But yeah, that was a learning experience.
Oh man. Yep.
Well, you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, I think I'm getting distracted with all Jack's fans out here.
We got a lot of people in the studio today. The applause sign is broke at the moment, but we're going to get that fixed. So next time we have you on, we'll have that fixed for you, Jack.
Okay.
So Thanks for coming on, and we'll do it again sometime. Maybe who do you want to have in the studio with you next time, sitting next to you?
Aaron and I'll talk about that. We've had some thoughts on that already. Yeah,
we'll keep that on the down low for
There's
now.
a couple of guys we're going to have to lean on pretty heavily. We'll do it then.
All right, Jack. Thanks for coming in.
You bet.
Thanks.
Things I've kicked myself for not taking more pictures, you know.
Well, that time at Last Quest, I had pictures on the computer and I lost them all. And it's like, I've got all these memories, but it's like, especially for what we're doing here, it's like, man, these pictures really
adds to it a lot, yeah.
Yeah.